we get started, just a reminder that you can find all of my available rental properties on my website at marcguzman.com. If you own investment property, click on the Owner Services section to see our complete list of services. Thank you to our sponsor for today's episode, East Brother Beer. Located on Canal Boulevard in Point Richmond, East Brother Beer mixes classic brewing styles with precision and modern sensibility to create the perfect Bay Area craft beer. As the son of Roger Waters, who co-founded the band Pink Floyd, and a mother with a bigger record collection than his dad, it's no surprise that Harry Waters became an accomplished musician. His childhood consisted of touring with his father, learning the piano, and you've probably heard his voice as a child in Pink Floyd's song Goodbye Blue Sky. Today, along with sporting an incredibly long red beard, Harry has become an expert piano and Hammond organ player, scores films, and performs with his band, McNally Waters. He joins me on the podcast to discuss his unique upbringing with music and his techniques in scoring a film. Harry, so thanks for being on the podcast. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, one question I'd like to ask every guest on the show is what currently has your attention? And I think right now the coronavirus has everyone's attention. So is there something besides the coronavirus, something more positive that's got your attention?
Yes, something better. That is a good question. What's got my attention? Trying to maintain work, which is kind of difficult. Sort of everything that's got my attention right now is as a result of the coronavirus. So just hustling for work when you're a freelance, anything I think can be difficult, Mm-hmm. So I'm just trying to work out how to take meetings without actually leaving the house and schmoozing, which is a big part of being a freelance creative person. So that takes up my time. But
this coronavirus
movies with. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, this coronavirus has really impacted so many different industries, and we hear about the restaurant industry quite a bit out there because we're seeing everything shut down. But that's a whole nother industry of freelancers and creatives that you mentioned networking, and networking is huge. Yeah,
and it's something I'm really bad at, but just by nature. I'm kind of introverted and, not especially social. So to go out and get the jobs in the first place is the hard part for me. Making the music is sort of the easy part. That's the fun part for me. But the schmoozing I find difficult. So this makes it doubly hard, but almost in some ways more of a relief because it means I don't have to go out and do that,
Yeah, for sure. I've been seeing some really great memes on the internet for introverts. And one of the funniest ones I saw was, so you're telling me that staying at home and avoiding people is now socially acceptable?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how I feel. It's actually, I have to say, I know we've only been not even a week yet. My kids came home from school on Thursday, a day before the official, kind of shutdown. It's been, my wife describes it, it's like Christmas without the presents. We just sort of, they do their work in the morning and then we have the rest of the day free. We're going on bike rides and we hiked up to Mescal yesterday and we're watching, we're all, movie files. So we all love watching movies. We're just watching tons of movies and playing board games and swimming. And it's sort of like a little piece of heaven, really, in spite of the madness,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, you are also well known for having this very large beard. So I have to ask, how long has it taken for you to grow this beard?
I used to grow it for a year and then shave it once, sort of every year. My kids used to do it at my dad's place in the countryside in the UK, and they would cut it off once a year. We'd do it with scissors and a trimmer. And I just 1 year turned into 2, turned into 3, and I think it's been 7. I think by this summer, July or whenever, I think that'll be 7 years. Something like that.
Wow.
But I'm considering shaving it off. But let's wait and see. It's more out of laziness. There's no religious reasons or fashion reasons. I just can't be bothered to shave every day. It's almost just sort of easier to not shave. People say to me, "Wow, that's amazing! Look, you've grown a beard." And I just want to say, mate, what you guys do is amazing. You literally have to shave every day. I just do nothing, and my beard grows. I haven't done anything impressive. It's just I haven't done it for 7 years. So, yeah.
Now, there has to be some kind of maintenance that comes along with a beard, or is there absolutely zero maintenance?
No, zero maintenance. I've always been a clean person. So, I have to get wet every day, whether it's a shower or a bath. I have to, if I get out of bed in the morning and I don't immediately get clean, I kind of feel scummy. So I'm in the shower every morning, and I just, it gets wet and I wash it, and it's no maintenance, really.
Now, the reason why you're on the podcast today is because you're a musician, and I want to get into your background here and how were you, and explain for a lot of the listeners, how were you introduced into music, and at what age do you realize this is what you wanted to do for the rest of your life?
Oh, sorry, you cut out there. Did you say for the rest of your life?
Yeah, for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
At what point, like, how were you introduced, and at what point did you realize this was your passion?
Yeah. They happened at different times, obviously. I mean, in answer to the first question, I remember, I'm sure we all have these moments, musicians and non-musicians alike. I mean, everyone loves music, so everyone has those just imprinted memories that are just really special to them. I had a sort of a musical epiphany when I was maybe 7, I think, about 7, and I heard Pet Sounds, and it just my brain exploded. It was from that moment on. Maybe I was 6 or 7, and my mum had a fantastic record collection. All my music, my taste and my sort of love of music came from my mum, who'd had this. Both my parents, but my mum had the record collection, and all on vinyl, just of all the good stuff from the 50s and the 60s and mainly 60s and 70s. But anyway, I'd heard some Beach Boys somewhere, so I just started going through this vinyl, and I put on Pet Sounds. I can't remember the song. I wish I could. Maybe it was God Only Knows or something. I can't remember, but it just blew my mind. And I'm an avid Beach Boys are still, in my top bands of all time. So that was the moment when I realized, oh wow, music is what it is. It transcends everything, and I just loved it. I just loved it. And then I became obsessed with the Beach Boys, and I listened to everything they've ever done. I still listen to the Beach Boys a lot. So that was the first. I think that was your first question. So I was 7.
So that's
something like that.
So it's interesting. So your father co-founded Pink Floyd, but your mother had the record collection.
She had the record collection. My dad obviously loves music deeply as well, but he didn't. I don't recall him ever. I don't think he had any music. I remember asking him about that one day. I said, "Why don't you ever listen to music?" He said, "Oh, there's too much going on in my head. There's too much music going on in my head." And I think maybe a lot of musicians feel that. I don't listen to music perhaps as much as people think professional musicians are supposed to. I mean, I'm constantly, it's a sort of an ongoing joke. My wife will look at me, we're at a party or a conversation. She said, "You're just humming, aren't you? You're just singing." I go, "Yeah." Most of the time I'm humming sort of in my head or composing, or there's some music going on in my head pretty much all the time. And that's one of the reasons why when I go into a restaurant or a bar or a public place and there's music playing, it's either incredible for me or indescribably awful. Mostly it's indescribably awful, because most of the music you hear when you go into a public space, it's Justin Bieber or whatever other shit exists out there, Sorry to Justin Bieber, not my cup of tea, but it's sort of all consuming for me. When music is on, I can't ignore it. So that's a good thing and a bad thing, I guess. But yeah, it was from my mum. Yeah, her record collection is what is how I discovered music, and it was full of Buffalo Springfield, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, Dr. John, Professor Longhair, the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, all that kind of good stuff. The Byrds, the Animals, Buddy Holly, Elvis.
Do you
all really kind of
Do you feel like a lot of that music has really influenced your style today?
Yeah, of course. All the music that a musician listens to growing up influences you in some way or another, some more than others. There is music that I absolutely love listening to, but I wouldn't say that I've been necessarily influenced by it in terms of my playing or the kind of music that I like to make. I love death metal, I love like really heavy sort of thrash metal, but I don't know if that really comes out in the music that I make or my playing, whereas Randy Newman was my huge hero growing up, and I learned to play in part listening to Randy Newman and just learning, I'm like a Randy Newman songbook. I love playing his songs, and So he's had a huge impact on the way I play and my writing, and Dr. John, the New Orleans piano players like Fats Waller and Fats Domino and Meade Lux Lewis. I know he's not, he's a Chicago guy, I think, but they're like the boogie woogie players and ragtime, Scott Joplin. That's all stuff I was introduced to from my mum's collection, and they've had a huge impact on how I play and how I think about music, and feel music. Yeah.
What instruments do you play growing up? What was the very first one you picked up?
Piano. I can only really play the piano. My wife, when people ask me, well, can you play the guitar? And I say, no, not really. My wife kind of rolls her eyes and says, look, you can play the guitar and you can play the drums and you can play, yeah, but not really. I can strum a few chords. And I did actually in my teens, I actually stopped playing piano. Well, not stopped entirely, but I'd sort of devoted all my energy into learning the guitar for about 5 years, from maybe 16 to about 20, 21, and I listened to tons of Pink Floyd and Jimi Hendrix and Led Zeppelin. My first job was playing in a Led Zeppelin tribute band. So I played it was unbelievably sort of difficult job because I played all the keyboards, but I also played all the second guitar parts. So all the acoustic guitar parts on Battle Forevermore and whatever, Going to California. But then I played the 12-string on Song Remains the Same. I played the harmony guitar parts on Black Dog. And, so sure. I learned to play the guitar for 5 years. And so I can play a little bit of guitar, but I'm a piano player.
Okay.
Piano.
Yeah, very, very cool. So growing up, you're playing the piano. And at what point did you say, I really want to make this my career? This is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Sure, that's a good question. I'd always played I think I started when I was 8, maybe 9. I had piano lessons, and I enjoyed it, and I would always play for a few minutes a day, maybe 20 or 30 minutes. I just enjoyed sitting down, but I wasn't one of those kids that, I wasn't one of those savant kids who were just, wow, this kid's incredible and he's only ever definitely going to be a piano player, And then, but then when I was 11, I went to a new school, and so I moved away from home. I went to boarding school, and the teacher there just changed the way. I hadn't discovered really playing boogie woogie and ragtime until he properly introduced me to it, and I started playing it. So it was at that point that I didn't know I wanted to do that for the rest of my life, but I knew that was something sort of that I enjoyed more than anything else. And so that was around 11, and I loved it. And then I guess I left school, and I was always in bands. I was in an indie rock band and a Led Zeppelin tribute band. And then as a result of that Led Zeppelin tribute band, I joined a Grateful Dead tribute band. Someone came up to me at the end of one of the boot Led Zeppelin, we were called, at the end of a boot Led Zeppelin gig, and said, hey, I'm in a Grateful Dead tribute band. We need a keyboard player. Do you want to join? And I'd never listened to the Grateful Dead, although weirdly my mum had tons of Grateful Dead records, but I just never listened to them. You know, she had such a big collection, couldn't listen to everything. And I said, well, sure, okay, why not? And so I learned a bunch of Grateful Dead tunes and fell in love with it and joined that band. And that was I was about 19, but I also was working other jobs at the time, just dumb jobs that were a complete waste of time, just to, you know, sort of pay the bills kind of thing. And so I quit. I stopped doing all other jobs when I was maybe 19 or 20. And I was in, as I say, Boot Led Zeppelin and the Cosmic Charlies, who were the Grateful Dead tribute band. And I had an indie rock band, which didn't make any money, but the other two did. We gigged a lot. And so I sort of made a living from that. So yeah, I was 20 maybe. And being in those other jobs, I would just sit there just being miserable, saying, what the hell am I doing? I just want to be, you know, playing music. And so I quit. I remember telling the boss that I worked at one of the first internet providers. They were called Clarinet in the UK. They were like the main internet ISP, you know, back in the day in 97 or 98 or something. And I went to her. She was a really nice lady, a French lady. And I just said, look, this is not for me. I'm totally miserable. I'm going to quit, handing in my notice, you know. And she was very sweet and wished me well. And yeah, so I was 20 maybe. So yeah, since then.
Wow. So all that led up to currently what you're doing now. So what kind of music projects are you currently providing or working on?
Sure. The last 6 months have been really good. I've been really busy, you know, which is what you need when you're a freelancer. So what have I done? I'm just finishing a documentary about the Cobra. God, I can't remember all the letters. It's Carroll Shelby, who's the character that Matt Damon plays in the Ford versus Ferrari movie that's just been out in the cinema. He makes cars. You know, he's the one that made the car for Ford to try and beat Ferrari. And he built some AC Cobra, something or other. I'm not a car guy, so I can't tell you the numbers that come after it, you know, the sort of classification. But anyway, so it's a documentary about this car. So I've just done that. And then I've just done, I did a lot of the music for Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee.
Oh,
you know, when
cool,
I don't know if you've ever seen that show, but there's always kind of jazz, you know, kind of. Exactly. Yeah. So that, you know, when they're sitting in the cafes, there's always jazz music. Seinfeld loves jazz. So that it's just, there's jazz going underneath, you know. So I've done a bunch of that over the years. So I did another, I think 2 albums worth of that, maybe 25 tracks or something. An album is normally 12 pieces if you write an album for a music production company. So I did 24 of those. And then what else have I been doing? I've just done a project for Universal, which is really cool. Universal bought a company called Elias Arts, who are a commercial company based in Santa Monica, and but they were acquired by Universal. So, and I have a relationship with them over the years, and so I've just done an album for them, 10 pieces. 10 pieces of music, and the brief was small ensemble pieces, and they gave me a couple of instrument ideas like marimba vibes, maybe a clarinet, some piano, you know, sort of John Bryan-esque kind of thing. Sort of melodic percussion instruments I love, like marimba and vibraphone and glockenspiel and celesta. I really like working with those instruments. So this is a perfect job for me. And I just finished that. What else?
That's really incredible. So what's your process when you sit down and start to compose music for a documentary or a show?
Yeah.
What's your process? What's your very first step?
Yeah, sure. I mean, well, the first step is opening up a new project. You know, in my sequencer, I use Cubase, and on PC for anyone that's interested. You know, I know there's very few of us out there creative to use PC, but I don't know, I'm PC, not Mac. So I use Cubase. So I open up Cubase, and then good question. It depends. I would say I normally start one of two ways. I'll either if I have temp music that the director is attached to, for example, this car documentary, he'd filled it with temp in all the places where he wanted music. So it was really that's an easy place to start, because you just have to kind of copy the vibe of the temp. So normally I'll sit down at the piano. If I'm leading with a melodic idea, then I'll always start with piano, and I'll move actually away from the computer and go and sit at my actual piano as opposed to my keyboard, and just start playing, and try and come up with something nice that sounds good, that sort of fits the piece. And I'll watch but I'll be looking at the screen of the picture, and just sort of try and play it along and make it kind of fit. And then once I've got a general idea, then I'll start recording that in Cubase. But if I don't have really an idea of some sort of strong melodic idea at the beginning, I'll normally start with a percussion, some sort of percussion idea to get a kind of rhythm down, or a bass part maybe. I'll think about the roots of the harmony that I want to play and what key I'm going to play in, and I'll just play with my left hand on my keyboard. I'll load up a bass sample, whether it's a double bass, upright bass, or an electric, and play a bass part. So that's the norm. So I'm either starting on piano or bass or percussion is my usual starting point,
Mm-hmm.
And then I build from there. I mean, if it's orchestral, if it's purely orchestral, then I always start with melody. Almost 90% of the time, I'll think of the lead melody, and I'll normally play that melody on the instrument that I think it might be at the end, whether that's a flute or a violin or a cello. Orchestral, almost always starting with melody first, and then I figure out the harmony later on, after I've done the melody.
Oh, very.
Because all music is about melody, really. At the end of the day, most of it.
Yeah, that's a very interesting process. And how? I mean, do you watch, let's say the documentary, do you watch the entire documentary first, or are you watching just sections that you're composing?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I normally watch it 2 times, sometimes 3, just to sort of get a vibe and, see. I mean, always, I'll watch it a couple of times first.
So how would you describe your music style today?
Good question. I mean, at the moment I'm studying classical, which is something I never did, classical piano, which is something I never did as a kid. And I realized that there were technically there were holes in my playing. My technique was lacking in certain aspects, and I couldn't work out how to play certain things, So I started studying. This is about 3 or 4 years ago. And so that's a huge influence on my playing and my composing at the moment, and I tend to get hired to do classical stuff, kind of neoclassical, I guess you'd call it. So
that's very interesting because that's very interesting because I grew up playing piano, and most of the songs I played growing up were classical music, Beethoven, Mozart.
Okay, yeah,
and so how do you feel it helped close up certain gaps in your piano skills? Really curious to hear more about that. Just basic techniques.
As a kid, I knew scales. I knew all the scales, but I never, rigorously practiced them daily. I never did warm-up technique. I just used to start playing, and it was always ragtime or boogie woogie or New Orleans kind of thing, So that stuff comes kind of quite natural to me. But so as a result of doing, now I'm fastidious with my practice, unless I'm really, really busy with work and I can't practice. Then I'll say I do a good hour of technique a day, scales, arpeggios, Hanon, obviously, Czerny, Donani, all these guys who just do real technical stuff to increase your facility, make your forefinger and little finger less weak and more independent of each other, and that makes every aspect of my music and my playing better. It just makes everything easier. You know, if you have the technique, you can express yourself in a truer way. You know, and when you're playing, someone posted this, a friend of mine, Nick Mancini, he's a great vibes player. He's fantastic and a jazzer and a lovely guy. And he posted and said, when you're performing, don't try and be better than you are. You know, you have to forget your practice. When you're on stage and performing, or even if you're performing for a few people at home, that's not practice. That's just you doing your best. And if you don't have something under your fingers at that point, you can't play it then. You then have to go back the next day and go, shit, I wanted to be able to do that and I couldn't. So that's what I need to practice now, you know? And I don't know why I thought of that. That's just a sort of interesting thing. You know, you can't practice when you're on stage. It's a very different thing, practice and performance.
Yeah, I've never heard that before, but it makes a lot of sense to just kind of let go.
Yeah.
It's not practice.
Exactly.
You can't try to be better than what you really are. You just have to let go and enjoy it, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I remember, and not that I performed for a lot of people. It's really just it was a hobby growing up, and performed really just for family, friends at parties. But it was one of those things that in my head I was constantly trying to remember certain things I learned during practice, and for me it was a little bit like practice. So it's very good to hear that advice, especially for a lot of young new musicians coming up. Yeah, it's something everyone struggles with. Certainly when you're young, and you think, oh God, can I play this lick? You know, if you're thinking, should I play this lick now? You probably shouldn't be playing it in a performance. You know, you need to kind of have that stuff nailed. I mean, but on the other hand, you know, you need to be open, and everyone makes mistakes. And I'm not saying you can't ever make mistakes, because everyone does. And you need to be pushing yourself, you know, but you can't be practicing on stage. You have to be performing, you know? Mm-hmm. But that can be a difficult distinction. But, well, let's talk. It was for me. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about actually performing when you're playing the piano, because when you are playing a guitar or some other instrument, you're usually standing up. You've got the ability to move around. You have the ability to even do other things to attract the crowd to actively participate in your performance. Yeah. But when you're playing the piano, you're, for the most part, sitting down and you're playing the piano. Yeah. So what are some techniques that you've learned in order to get the crowd to be a little bit more interactive with you? I mean, what have you learned over the years? Yeah, sure. I mean, that's a great question. I've never been a front man, never been a singer. So it's not a skill that I've ever had to develop or hone or rely on. I've always had a front man, but I've never been the singer. No, I've never been the center of attention, which is absolutely good. That's perfect for me. I don't want to be the center of attention, So I have a microphone in my band because it's my band, along with Larry, who's the other half of McNally Waters, and he does all the singing and a lot of the talking. But I'll try and engage the audience and say thank you. And if something feels natural to say, a joke or just point something out, then I will. But I'm not really a stage talker. I'm happy just to be not invisible, but I'm happy to just play the keyboards, the piano, and just sort of be done with it. Really, I'm not a very effusive stage talker or that's not something that comes naturally to me, and not something I've really ever had to work at, because I've never been the front man. So I don't know how singers get up there and do it, because it's the singer's job, really, at the end of the day, to really bring the audience in, perhaps more so than the other musicians. Not that their job is more important, but people connect with the singer, don't they? I mean, certainly more than the keyboard player. No one cares about the keyboard player, which is fine with me. It's not something I've really given much thought to. Maybe I should. Maybe I need to think about that more, Well, I would imagine that maybe it doesn't come out like physically performing to try to get the crowd in, like being the front man, but maybe it translates more through the music.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we did this thing actually. Just thinking about it now, when I tour with my band, we do a thing in the middle of our set where we play solo, and we sort of pay homage to people who have influenced us over the years and people that are special to us. And Larry always plays The Temptations, "Just My Imagination." Don't know if you know that song.
Oh yeah.
It's a great song, and he plays it just him. So it's just him and guitar, and he sings obviously, and he does his thing, and then I play something solo, and I'll normally play Dr. John or some Professor Longhair. Sometimes I'll sing some Randy Newman if I'm feeling like it. But then quite often I'll play a ballad, in a sort of Bill Evans style. I'll play Waltz for Debbie or Danny Boy or Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And that for me is when it's just you performing and you're not singing, it's just you're playing. That's when you get the most, that's when I feel the most connection, I guess is the best way of saying it, because it's just you and the audience. And I feel I connect way more in a more honest way when it's just playing rather than talking. I don't really like talking on stage. I don't feel necessarily very comfortable with it. The music is always the way that I communicate the best when I'm on stage, the easiest when I'm on stage.
Yeah, it's amazing how music can just really connect to the point where you really don't need words most of the time. It's just the music, the instrumental sometimes is just, I mean, that's one thing about classical music, right? Is so much can be extracted from songs and stories extracted out of songs when it's simply just instrumental.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I've always loved instrumental music. I mean, I love singing, obviously, and lyrics as well, but I'm perfectly happy listening to instrumental music. I love that.
Now, in your opinion, what's the best scored film?
That is a good one. Okay, so for me, I have my top bunch of guys, and at the top, hands down for me, is John Williams. From as early as I can remember, he's my number one. So a lot of my favorite scores are John Williams scores. Hands down, my number one favorite score of all time is Superman. The Richard Donner Superman, with Christopher Reeve. That main theme. I've listened to it thousands of times. I just love it. It's absolutely my favorite. But there's a bunch of other guys' scores that I love. I recently rewatched, when we're on our quarantine at home, Catch Me If You Can, which is another John Williams scored movie, and that's fantastic. I hadn't listened to that score since I watched that film whenever it came out. But some other mentions: Alan Silvestri, his score for the original Back to the Future. I absolutely love that. That's one of my favorites. And all the John Bryan films that he did for Paul Thomas Anderson, who's one of my favorite filmmakers, for Magnolia, Punch Drunk Love, those are fantastic. Cliff Martinez is another one. He did all Soderbergh's movies, and he did the music for The Nick, that great TV show with Clive Owen, which I love. That was sort of electronic, weird kind of score. He did Sex, Lies and Videotape, and Solaris and Traffic. I love those. And then Johan Johansson, it's another one that I love. That was really sad that he died last year or the year before. He did two scores that I loved, Sicario and Arrival. I thought those were amazing. And then on a sort of different style, there's a guy called Disaster Piece. His real name's Rich Freeland, but he goes under Disaster Piece, and he did the music for a sort of low budget horror movie called It Follows, which actually became really sort of quite successful. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but it's sort of like weird orchestral, but minimal orchestral, but there's synth, but he does a lot of it with kind of synths and weird sounds. I love that. And then there's a couple more. I did actually write this down because I knew you were going to ask me this question, and then I knew I'd forget, so I wrote them all down. So there's a couple more on my list.
Well,
Johnny Green.
Yeah, I do want to interject real quick, and for the listeners, if the listeners have not actually seen the difference of how music, like good music being composed, how it can affect the entire film, the feel, the look of the film. It's amazing. Yeah. And there's great YouTube videos.
Yeah, it makes all the difference.
Yeah, there's great YouTube videos out there that show your basic film without any music, and then the exact same footage with music, and it's night and day. It's night and day. And so
totally. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so it's amazing. And now kind of learning more about it, I've really gained a whole new appreciation for movies, composers, and just really how music affects the whole visual feeling to the movie. Yeah.
I mean, it just, as you say, it adds a level of emotion that just isn't possible without music,
Mm-hmm. Well,
it's
you
weird
mentioned
when you see a film without.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Sicario. I mean, if you go back and something very simple as that, just like
well, that's it. Yeah,
it's throughout the entire movie, and something so simple, but just the way it was done, it just adds a whole deep, just evil cartel, like just absolutely. A whole scary feel to the movie that it was just brilliantly done.
Yeah, the tension in that. There's the scene when they're at the border crossing, and they're in the car, and there's guys around them. I can't remember which way round it is. Either they're outside the cars. Yeah, they're outside the cars looking for the bad guys, and the bad guys are in the car, and you can see they've got their guns ready to go, and it's so tense. And that, as you say, it's that thing you described, that kind of weird drone, that phasey drone thing. It's so tense. Mm-hmm. And, it's just unbelievable. And it wouldn't be that tense without that kind of weird music over it, just love it. Yeah. And that is actually it's a similar reason that I love the next score, which is There Will Be Blood, which is Paul Thomas Anderson, but not with John Bryan. It's Johnny Greenwood, who's the guitarist from Radiohead. That has a similar score of these weird synths, sort of detuned synths coming into sort of phase and matching up, which is just, I absolutely love that. That's one of my favorites. And then Social Network, which is Atticus Ross and Trent Reznor. That's one of my sort of favorites. They won the Oscar for that. I'm pretty sure they won it for that movie. It's just brilliant score, quite minimal. It's got this simple sort of piano motif that goes throughout, and I love that. And then obviously I love Hans Zimmer, quite a lot of the time. In particular, in Interstellar, there's a scene where they're driving through a cornfield, sort of smashing the corn down. It's Matthew McConaughey, and I think his daughter's in the car. Can't quite remember. Anyway, that's amazing. I love that piece in particular, and I love the score for Dunkirk. Although I didn't love the movie, I thought that score was absolutely incredible, using the sort of ticking clock.
Now with this quarantine in place, you've given me a whole list of movies to go back and watch and
and listen to the score.
The score, yeah. So before we finish wrapping up here, I do want to ask you your ultimate dream project. What's the one project that you've always wanted to work on?
Oh God. Oh, that's really hard. I mean, I guess saying the project, it would sort of be impossible because probably the project doesn't even exist yet. It would probably be working with a particular person, like Paul Thomas Anderson. I love John Bryan and Johnny Greenwood. Working with someone whose films I just love and I feel that I could add something to of my own. That would probably be. That's what I'm aiming for. Working with a good director, or a good showrunner on TV. As I said, Cliff Martinez, who did the music for The Nick. There's so much good TV out there now, shows on Netflix and stuff, with great music. but so yeah, it would be working for someone, who I really like. And it's Soderbergh. I'd love to work with Steven Soderbergh, or Paul Thomas Anderson, or, there's too many to name, too many great directors, but film or TV, that's what I really enjoy doing. So yeah, something like that. That's where I'm aiming.
Awesome. So Harry, I want to thank you for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and for listeners, your website is harrywaters.com, and we will go ahead and link it up in the description where they can see.
Fantastic. If you could, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, if you can do my band as well, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, sure.
McNally Waters. Yeah, maybe I've sent it to you or not. I can't remember, but it's McNallyWaters.com. So McNally Waters.com, so that they can, hear my band music there. Yeah.
Perfect. And we'll go ahead and link that up in the description. So Harry, again, Fantastic. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much. You too.
And stay safe during this quarantine time. And I'm sure, hopefully here in a couple of weeks, the entire world is back to normal.
I hope so. Fingers crossed. Yeah, you guys stay safe too. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Thank you to our producer, Sam Lubman. Please subscribe, like, comment, and share the podcast. Remember, you can listen to the podcast on iTunes, Podbean, iHeartRadio, Google Play, SoundCloud, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. For more information on my business as a property manager and real estate team, go visit my website at marcguzman.com. I really want to thank all of you for listening. It means the world to me, and I hope today's episode provides you value in your day-to-day life. I created this podcast to help showcase the many great people that live in this world and help share some knowledge that I've learned along the way in life. Again, thank you for listening. Check out our sponsors, and I'll catch you on the next episode.